Hi, welcome to my podcast, Reclaim. I am your host, Thaís Sky. I have supported women navigate the complexities of being human for over 10 years. This podcast is where I disseminate some of those learnings and offer thoughts and guests to guide you into your healing. Welcome. Hello, everybody. Thaís Sky here. I am so excited for this treat that I have for all of you on this episode. This is the final episode of the second part of the series that I'm doing called The Art of Depth Coaching. If you're new to this series, last year I did episodes 1 through 3 on the art of depth coaching, a series really geared for depth coaches who do deep, meaningful emotional work, whether that's like addiction work, trauma work, any type of coaching where you're trying to get underneath the surface, when you're trying to go beyond just mindset or behavioral modifications and you're really trying to get to root. I call that depth work. And so this series is for those coaches who do depth work to gain some skills and knowledge and insight into how to do this work ethically and responsibly and masterfully. I am a mentor for depth coaches. My mentorship is an opportunity for depth coaches to learn from me to cultivate their skills and their confidence. I've been a coach for over 10 years, so I know a thing or two about what it takes to really thrive in the coaching industry, given the fuckery of the coaching industry. And 3.5 years ago, I went ahead and got my master's in clinical psychology. And so I bring a really unique lens to the coaching world, having dipped my toes in the world of mental health, where I have the education of trauma. I know how to hold more complex cases, and I bring that knowledge to support coaches in doing their work in a really beautiful, meaningful way. And so I decided to record the second half of this series. So I did 3 episodes last year, and I'm doing 3 episodes this year for a total of 6 episodes in this series, The Art of Depth Coaching. Maybe next year I'll do another 3. Who knows? I love keeping series really alive and adding to them as my expertise increases. And here we are. Okay, we are in our final section of this series for this year. And I'm really, really excited because, like I said, it's a really special treat. I recorded one of my weekly group mastermind conversations for all of you. I asked the mentees in the group mastermind how they felt about me recording an episode, recording a session and sharing it onto the podcast. And they were just thrilled at the opportunity. And I was just delighted that they consented to this. And so we recorded an episode. We recorded a session. My group mastermind meets for 75 minutes every week on Thursday mornings. I recorded one of our sessions, and now I get to play it for all of you. The women in my group mastermind are experts in the field. They come from different expertises, different backgrounds. For example, we have a career coach on board, but they all come together to spend time every week mulling over and contemplating and talking about the specific challenges in their business and the specific challenges in their coaching work. Our space is super sacred. What happens, what we talk about in the group mastermind does not get discussed outside the mastermind. We also have a very alive Voxer group where we talk every day about what's going on in their business, in their lives, or in the coaching industry that they're trying to digest themselves. So much of this work, turns out, is figuring out what right relationship we want to have to all of the things that the industry does. How do we want to market ourselves? How do we want to charge money? What's the length of the container? And so a lot of our conversations also end up being not just what's happening in our business, but what's happening in the industry and how we want to relate to that and how we want to navigate that. And so this is a really, really sacred container. The opportunity to record it was not taken lightly. And so there are a few caveats that are important to outline about this recording. One, the very nature of recording something changes the dynamics of it. This recording is slightly different than what happens off recording, off camera, because it's more personal when it's not being recorded for thousands of people to hear, right? And so there's a depth and a level of vulnerability that is both exposed in this recording and also held back a little bit from this recording, because it's not always appropriate to share our most intimate challenges and struggles with the greater internet. Also, I made it very clear to the mentees, to this group mastermind, that we're not going to be talking about our one-on-one coaching. We're not going to be talking about our clients. And I did that, and I asked that very specifically, because while this container is a space where we talk about our one-on-one clients to be able to give them the best support, this isn't about gossiping. This isn't about telling secrets. This is a very professional space where we really discuss what is happening within the coach, what is happening within the relationship, so we can best understand the client and support the client and get the most important support for them, the most vital support for them. That is a really important part of the group mastermind, is cultivating skill set that comes from really understanding the psychology of each client. However, that is so inappropriate to record. Of course it is. We hold our clients to the highest esteem. We hold their confidentiality, their secrets, what they share with us, to the highest esteem. So that is not recorded. That would be unacceptable to record. I would never do that. And so that is completely removed from this recording. We didn't even touch anything like it. Which means that, of course, it is slightly modified. This recording is just not exactly what happens in the mentorship container. However, it's a pretty close proximity. And re-listening to this conversation, I'm just so touched by the authenticity of these women and how they balance this perfect vulnerability of like, listen, this is where I'm struggling and this is what I'm navigating, and also competence. I mean, these women are incredible coaches and do really brilliant coaching work. It is remarkable to watch them in action. And I am just so awed at their presence and the fact that they come every week and talk about what's going on in their lives and in their business with me, and that I get to be a part of their journey, because these are just incredible women. And right now I do have 2 spaces open in my mentorship. I have one-on-one spaces open, and I have spaces in my group mastermind. So if you're listening to this conversation and you're like, wow, I would love to be a part of something like this and get support, not just from Thaís, but from other women. These women really rely on each other. They support each other. They cheer each other on. They market each other, record podcast episodes with each other. I mean, it's really cool how they elevate each other, how they support each other on social media. Once you're in the group mastermind, you're in a lifelong sisterhood. I really believe that. It's really brilliant how these women support each other. If it's something that you're interested in, you are welcome to go to thaissky.com/mentorship and apply to be a part of the group or to do one-on-one mentorship with me. Okay, let me make sure I address everything I want to address. Okay, so the intention for this recording, right, is for you to get an idea of what happens behind closed doors. And you'll notice that it is a very intimate conversation. I cap my mentorship at 4 women, and I do this very strategically. I'm kind of tired of the coaching industry's narrative that the only way that you can do good work is by mass producing it, right? Getting as many people in as possible, packing things up. And I'm finding that with this group mastermind, I really like the intimacy. I like the smallness of it. I like really knowing what's happening with each of the mentees, and really being able to support them and having so much time in a session for them to get all of the support that they need. That's a really important cornerstone of my work as of late. I like intimacy, I like depth, and I like really getting to know people. And so that's important to note here, is that it is intimate and it's profound in that way, because then we can get really close and into the nitty-gritty of what's happening with each of the mentees. The other thing that you'll note is that there is a lot of context that you all don't get to have, obviously, but that I have with these women, because all of the women that are in this recording have been working with me for more than 5 months, and some of them much longer. And I love that. I do ask for a minimum of a 5-month commitment, but most of the women choose to go longer because this is something that they just find needs to just be in their business, a cornerstone of their business, so to speak. It's not a churn and burn and be done. And that's what I love about the mentorship as an opportunity to just have a continual support. Like, what if we didn't have to do all of this complicated business stuff by ourselves? And what if it wasn't just always about mass production and making money, but actually about cultivating insight and depth and just a really spacious container for our work? That's what I want you to get from this recording. Okay. And so the things that we talk about in this recording, we talk about money, we talk about marketing, we talk about launching, we talk about how to find the right rhythm for our work. We talk about the coaching industry and how we relate to the coaching industry. And so as you're listening as a coach, I encourage you to really think about how these topics have affected you and how you've navigated these really complex topics and ways in which you've found have really worked for you and ways in which you have continued to struggle with. It's important for us to really get honest with where we are in order for us to know where to go. And so I invite you to get vulnerable with yourself as you're listening to this conversation and think, how would you have responded if you were in this conversation? And where are you at with your relationship to all of these really complicated, uncertain aspects of being a coach in the coaching industry? Okay. And so without further ado, I bring to you this conversation with Marie, with Jess, and with Rochelle. Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. Hi.
We're a little giggly because this is an interesting experience to have our very special and private and sacred space recorded. And I appreciate all of you being willing to do this little experiment with me of recording one of our sessions. But I can imagine I know there are some nerves here, some excitement, some anticipation. So just wanted to name that off the bat, that people who are listening in are maybe also sensing that there's a little bit of like a giggliness here.
Definitely.
So I guess I'll start the way I tend to start our time together, which is, how has it been going? What's been coming up for all of you this week?
Well, I could start. As you know, I've been thinking about relaunching my first ever group offering.
Yeah.
I've been thinking of running it straight through the holidays, just like I did last year for the holidays. So it would be 3 months, November, December, and January, straight through with no breaks. And so as I'm like gearing up for the launch, I'm noticing like I wrote the whole sales page. I was really excited. Like my energy was behind it, like 100%. And like I've told myself I would kind of open the doors at the end of this week. And I'm noticing, I'm looking at the calendar and I'm like, oh, and I'm feeling myself like almost like want to walk it back and say, like, do I really want to do this? I don't know why. I'm just having like, there's stuff coming up for me around like, I don't know. Again, putting myself out there and making that leap and being seen and launching. And I don't know why suddenly this week it hit me. It's feeling hard. And I'm just noticing myself wanting to like take a step back and say, well, do I really have to launch this right now?
You're imagining that the hesitation is about the launch, not about the group itself? Or do you feel like there's a combination of the two? Like, do you feel like you would feel this way for any group that you would be launching?
Yeah, maybe it's something I'm feeling this month. I'm feeling a little bit tired. So I haven't been able to make sense of everything that I'm feeling, but definitely I'm feeling tired. Like the launch is feeling like heavy. And I'm just thinking, do I really need to be in launch mode right now? Or like, do I just kind of like, I guess I'm struggling with the balance between listening to my energy and following my rhythm while at the same time sticking to like the calendar that I set for myself in my business. And I think maybe that's where I'm at. I spent the summer really following my rhythm and slowing down and not pushing myself. And then I thought in the fall, I'm going to push myself, and I'm going to work a little bit more, and I'm going to create offerings for my community. And now that it's the fall, I'm like, oh. So that balance, I'm struggling with the balance at the moment.
This is so, I think, common for so many of us, that there are those of us who do things really organic, and we see them online, and I'm imagining we've all experienced it. We're just going to let everything just flow. And there's no plan, because I just trust that when I'm meant to do it, I'm meant to do it. And then there's the other extreme. I'm thinking of you, Jess, for some reason. I don't even know if that would follow for you, where it's like, I need things planned every month for an entire year. And I will schedule my entire calendar, and I will know what I am launching this month, next year. And it can be much harder to find a relationship with both of these things, right? That's what I'm hearing that you struggle with, is like, how do we incorporate both of these things in my life right now, rather than one or the other, especially given that you just come off from a summer where you really did take space, and that you were trying to find your own rhythm again. And now incorporating structure, I can understand, feels a little stifling.
And like literally thinking of all of these online coaches who talk about masculine and feminine energetics. And I'm like, I feel like I spend the summer in my feminine, just like going with the flow and feeling into my business. And then I told myself I would fall back on my like masculine, like father self, who was like structure and organized and has a plan. And now I'm like, I don't know how to blend those two things. I guess I don't know what kind of entrepreneurship is still new for me. So I guess I don't know what kind of entrepreneur I am yet. Like, I don't yet know what works for me. When I zoom out and I look at a whole calendar year, I've only been full-time in my business for about a year. Before that, I was always juggling business and my job. So I think I'm really trying to figure out, like what kind of business I even want to run, and how do I want to organize myself? And there's no one above me to tell me what to do. Which is both great and hard.
Yeah. Well, Jess, Rochelle, what do you think?
I just love this conversation, because I feel like so much, we've talked about this before, so much in the coaching industry, there's this narrative of, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And I think that there's just like so much more nuance to it. And that's what we're kind of exploring here, is like, what are all the layers? I'm curious what they are for you, Marie.
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I'm sure there's so many layers, because it's like on the days that I feel really, really, really good about like all aspects of my business, on the days that you kind of close your computer and you're like, oh, this was an amazing day. Then I'm like, yes, I want to like take on new clients and launch and have like so many things. And then on the weeks that maybe this work feels hard or it's challenging, it comes and it obviously there's the work, and then there's my own stuff, and like once in a while the work will trigger something in my own stuff. And then on the weeks that this happens, it can feel heavy. And then I have a tendency to kind of want to like retreat and like not be seen.
And I think that really is important for you to think about in terms of the, email you received this week, and how that did really land for you as something to tend to within yourself, right? And so that may be impacting your excitement about launching your group. And you did just launch a new group. You are running a new group. That new groups take a lot of energy, right? Just like new clients take more energy, because we're really figuring out, we're in the throes of it with them. In the first few sessions, there's a lot more energy exchanged. There's a lot more anticipation and nervousness that's here. And it's important to think about how those things may also be affecting this decision, that maybe it may be useful for you to think about the first month of a new group is not maybe the time to be taking on anything else on. That's the time that should be really devoted towards this group, knowing yourself and knowing that the first few weeks of a group does take more out for you than say month 2 or 3 in the group.
Yeah. Oh, this is so helpful. I really think like maybe we talk a lot about like our, like our boundaries and setting our limits in our work. And I think that maybe this could be like a beautiful boundary to set for me to say, like, for the first 4 or 6 weeks of a brand new cohort, I just don't take on anything else, like not even a one-on-one client, even though it's completely different. But maybe I just do that because I know myself, and it's yeah. And even when it's going perfectly well, it's still very demanding for me. Even when everything is falling into place. No,
yeah. That's just, I think, the nature of groups. I think groups just require more. Just in terms of facilitation skills, in terms of you're holding space for more people, more energy. And while on the one hand, there's a relief in that they can be there for each other, right? That there's like a support element of it. On the other hand, there's a lot more energy being sent your way. There's a lot more pressure on you, whether you decide to take that pressure on or not. It's just in the existence, at least from what my understanding and my experience of groups. I'm sure there are people out there that feel totally different about groups. But when we're doing this type of depth work that you're doing in your groups, when we're talking about grief, and you're starting to hear these stories and people are trying to figure out how they relate to the group. I mean, it does just take a lot more energy than when the group has fallen into more of a rhythm. And I would love to say, oh, it's probably not going to be this way by your 30th group. I don't know if I can say that, because I think that there's a quality of sensitivity that you have that actually is what allows your work to be so potent and powerful. And there's a thickening that is inevitable as we continue to get support and do this work, which is that things don't feel so personal. And that's wonderful, but it's not about like a thick skin as if like you're not going to be impacted by, because the very nature of you being impacted by your clients is what allows you to be so empathic and attuned to and aware of what's coming up for them so that you can support them through it. So it's like there's a thickening, but it's not, I think, the way in which the coaching industry likes to think of it. Like, you're just not going to take it personal anymore. I think you're just going to know how to make use of that information as we continue in the practice of the work.
Yeah, that feels so true for me. It feels like you're right. In this group, in this mentorship, one thing that I've learned is how to make sense of what I'm feeling when I'm in front of a client, or what I'm feeling when I'm holding space for a group, and how my emotions are not just a reflection of myself, but sometimes can be a reflection of what the clients are feeling or how the group dynamics are playing out. And although I think I'm a very sensitive person, I think some things are always going to feel hard. I also think on the flip side, it's like almost like one of the things I like about myself in a way, because it does allow me my intuition is very strong, like I think I'm very good at building bridges between people and allowing them to come together. But yeah, that comes to like, there's an emotional cost to me, because it feels like I feel a lot, and I feel a lot.
And I think you're also talking something that I want to touch upon that, Jess, you brought into the Voxer about Instagram, and the exposing element of it, and how I don't think we talk enough about how there's such different parts of us in the entrepreneurial space, right? There's the part of us that is doing things behind closed doors in our one-on-one work, in our group, that no one else sees, right? These kind of where we're putting on the coach hat, the healer hat, whatever, we want to name it, the facilitator hat. And then suddenly we have to take all of that and make sense of it. And then we have to do the external work, or the external function, marketing ourselves, putting ourselves out there, finding language to find what is happening in this work, and like selling it.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be so exposing and hard and vulnerable. And it can feel really frustrating to know how to do that and how to express yourself when there's people of the world can have any other opinion about you and can give you that opinion. And yeah, so I'm thinking about that, and I'm wondering just about how you're feeling about Instagram and if you've given much more thought about how it's been feeling for you.
Yeah, I don't know why I struggle with Instagram. Like I remember in the beginning of the mentorship, Marie was like, I love Instagram. I was like, how could you love Instagram? It's awful. I don't know. I feel like for some reason, I just really struggle to express myself authentically there. And I don't in these other channels that feel more one-to-one versus one-to-many. And yeah, I do struggle, like the translation of like what we do in one-on-one versus how we talk about it. I mean, honestly, the more that I do one-on-one work and the longer that I'm in this mentorship, the disconnect is getting bigger and bigger for me because a lot of what I talk about in my marketing, especially Instagram, is like, here's how you get a job. Here's how you start a meeting or lead a meeting. And then like a lot of what's happening in my one-on-one containers, like, well, that is part of it. It's so much deeper. And I think I'm also now there's like a new layer of me struggling to articulate that and figure out how I want to talk about that, because it's not about the surface level stuff. And also the surface level stuff always gets the most likes. So like I'm trying to just navigate a bunch of things.
Mm-hmm. What do you think would what is the exposure about for you in terms of the one-to-many marketing?
There's something about podcasting that feels so private to me and so like juicy and comfortable. And it's so easy for me. And also like writing emails for some reason. It's just so easy for me to find the voice. And then on Instagram, it's just, I don't know, it like my brain just goes into this other place of like, this needs to be really good and this needs to be perfect for Instagram. And like, it's just like, there's this pressure, I think. And also, obviously on Instagram, you can see the identities of the people who are responding to your stuff versus with a podcast, you can't. And I think that impacts it too, because I like see other people who know me from my pre-coaching life. And I'm for sure like thinking about them and like, oh gosh, what do they think of this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was like a really big deal when I blocked my mother on Instagram. Because it was nothing to do with my love for her, nothing to do with like, love mom, hey mom, love you. Like it was literally not personal, but also noticing how I was so hyper aware of what I was writing and how she was going to be perceiving it. And like, she's not paying my bills. You know, like if you were paying, you know, if she was paying my bills, my life would be so different. But because she's not, and because my Instagram is my platform where I market my work, I can't be worried about what people who aren't going to be paying my bills are going to be thinking about me. And kind of deleting them from my mind, or in that moment, at that point in time, I had to kind of like delete her from my Instagram. Really forced me to think about, okay, that's no longer an excuse. So now what? Now what is the intimacy that's required within myself to have to continue to show up without being so, freaked out about what other people, those people, my high school friends, et cetera, are thinking about me. It's really hard.
Mm-hmm. I think just marketing yourself. It's like, it's so personal with coaching. It's the human, and there's no layers between you and that. And I think that there's something about that has felt very exposing to me, and it's gotten easier over time. But Instagram is where I feel the most exposed. And maybe it's because of the social nature of Instagram and how it is designed as a social platform. So like with podcasting, it's not about being the coolest person because it's not a social platform. It's about sharing information. Whereas Instagram, yes, it's about sharing information, but there's also other things built into it. And a lot of Instagram is like, let me show you how cool and popular I am. And so I think I get caught in the riptide of that a little bit. Whereas like in these other places, it just feels like I'm just focusing on like the content and the message in a way that like when I pull up Instagram or think about Instagram, there's like all this pressure.
I'm now suddenly thinking back to you, Marie. Do you think that that may be an additional element to what may be feeling reluctant about the launch, is that launching is so exposing and putting yourself out there, and it's hard to do that while you're also tending to this new group and tending to yourself as you hold space for this new group? Do you think that there's something also to that?
100%. Like when Jess was speaking about like feeling exposed, I don't feel like that about Instagram, but I feel like that when I'm using Instagram to launch. It feels so vulnerable. And I always feel like when the doors close or when my groups fill up and that launch, is done, and I get to go back to just writing what's just in my heart and just speaking to the people that I connect with online. And I just get to do it because I want to do it. It's so different. Then the vulnerability goes away and it's completely different. So yeah, it's very vulnerable.
So maybe it's less about masculine, feminine, less about trusting the time, like that may be kind of in the back burner, like the back of your mind as you continue to think about developing your business, but maybe it's more to do with this particular timing and the I guess we can call it like the masculine structure of timing your launches in a way that gives you the feminine space to be with the soft stuff, so that when you are launching, it's not coinciding and overriding and feeling even more exposing than it already is.
Right. And, coming from like a 9-to-5 job into a business, as Jess was saying, where you are the business, like you're marketing yourself. It's just you. It's like, it's the first time I have to consider my own feelings. Like in my job, it's like, no matter how I feel, I got to do what I have to do. There's no, and so it's very different. It's very vulnerable.
Well, and at what point do we stop considering our feelings? Like, is there ever a time when we're like, okay, enough feelings, like this is a business and we also have to show up in the business, right? And we've talked about this in terms of client work, how oftentimes, we have to show up in our client work and find ways to tend to ourselves so that we can hold space for them and be consistent for them and be there for them regardless of what's happening inside, not out of integrity place, but from a professional place, that this is our work, that this is something we hold very up on a pedestal. We're getting paid to do something really important and making sure that we're showing up for that important thing in a way that's honoring how our clients are coming into the work, and how that can feel really complicated when something big is coming up in our lives. I'm curious how you're thinking about all of this, Rochelle.
Yeah, social media is an interesting thing for me. Because I think for a long time, I really self-extracted to show up consistently, and also was in the place of like performance. And so over the past year or two, I've seen that really shift in me. And so now I find I really struggle to consistently work with the algorithms of like posting at least daily. I probably post a couple times a week now. And I feel like, as Marie was speaking about, and Jess, about that experience of being exposed, like I just feel my body tensing. So I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely there for me. And I don't even have a huge following, but there's something that's so, and I think with the past year, how we've all witnessed the canceling that's happened on social media, and just the vitriol that can happen, like it really activated a lot in me where, it didn't feel like a safe place to express myself anymore, because I found myself becoming hypervigilant. So I had to pull back and like regulate myself and attend to myself. And now I feel, I don't feel that as intensely, but of course it's still there.
It's back to that like open face of Instagram, that anyone can access your work and then kind of project their needs, desires onto you, right? How there is this kind of experience that's happening for many coaches, I think, where people are demanding that the content that the coach is writing fit their very unique lived experience, right? Like, okay, you're writing about sibling rivalry, but what about only children? Mm-hmm. Right? Like you talk about how much you're loving oranges, but that's not fair because I like grapes. Right. And like I'm making it trivial, but we're seeing that. We're seeing so many people wanting the content to fit their life. And that puts so much pressure on us of how do we write authentically to our experience while also keeping in mind our kind of privileges and oppressed identities, like keeping in mind how we're showing up and the space that we're in. And also letting go of the need to make it be for everyone when it inherently everything can't be for everyone. And I think that rubs up against the sense of feeling exposed, feeling vulnerable, and then feeling not good enough for that, right? Like attacked in that, feeling like we're doing our very best and that's not enough. And now we're going to be out of control, attacked for it.
It's so interesting how people express themselves on Instagram versus in the real world. Because like if you were sitting at a table with a bunch of people talking about sibling rivalry in the real world and someone was like feeling left out or not seen in that conversation, they probably wouldn't raise it in the same way that it gets raised on Instagram. And so it's just so fascinating how people feel free to engage in this way that I don't see in other places, that like you only see in these spaces. And it's like really bizarre because in the real world, that person might just say like, oh, it's different for me. Like, let me tell you how it's different for me. And that would like be a really rich conversation versus like, I can't believe you said that and that you didn't like tailor it to fit me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I can understand that it's such a struggle to figure out how to rise above that when we are doing something that is so inherently vulnerable, just marketing our work.
And how do you even put into words on a page what it is that you do in those private spaces, you know, in the one-on-one work with clients that, like, I have some clients that have been working with me for over a year. And like, there's no way I could describe that, like what that's like, or the richness or the depth of the work with a sales page. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It feels even like icky to put that on a sales page. Like, how do I even put that into words? It's so strange.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that I haven't touched my like work with me page in it feels like a couple of years, and so much has shifted. I'm just like, yeah, how do I describe this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because none of us are here like teaching people how to use Instagram to like, I don't know, launch like a business, you know, like we're like working with people's hearts, and it's so hard to convey what the work is really like and what the work is even really about.
Yes, like what the work is really about, especially when we've been taught that sales is about results.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
Right. And that we are supposed to sell the pain points, And then we offer them the result.
Ugh.
And I love that when it comes to like hiring someone that's going to revolutionize my sales funnel, like love that for me for that, because like, yeah, I want to know what results you create, because if I'm going to spend an inordinate amount of money to create sales funnels, I need to know the exact metrics. I need to know conversion rates. I need to, there's a place for that. If I buy the new iPhone, I want to know this, well, not too specific because I don't know what any of that means, but I do want to know like what some of the things and features that come with this new phone, if I'm about to spend $1,000 on it, like just, okay, an additional camera, cool, whatever. But when we're talking about the heart stuff, how do you write results? What results can you possibly guarantee?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I struggle with that because I want to guarantee the results. Like I am like, my orientation towards results is so fierce and so intense, like in my own life, that that spills over into my coaching. And I think one thing that I've like really had to learn is that like sometimes slow is really, really good. And like sometimes letting something unfold, maybe at a pace that feels like I'm not getting the client instant results, is actually really in their best interests. And my eyes have radically opened to that, because I would say probably not that long ago, I would have been like, that's absolutely not true. Like, why would you ever like want to slow things down? And now like I see the nuance, and like it's going to depend on the specific situation and what's happening with that person. But my mind has completely opened to this idea that this slow pacing and this patience can really be in service of the client. And I'm actually like really seeing it play out in my work. And I'm seeing the whole like tone of my work starting, like I can feel something changing in it because of that. And I can't really describe it, but it's really cool.
Yeah, it's been really cool to watch you since the beginning when you first joined and now, and how at the beginning there was this kind of excitement. It was very genuine, this excitement of getting your clients to this place, and like you're going to take them there. And there is no doubt if anyone can take anyone anywhere in the corporate world, it is you. I mean, no one doubts that. I mean, it's incredible, your skill, your knowledge, your insight. But it's been really cool to watch you slowly through your work come to understand the richer aspect of the work that comes when we let go of the destination and we really think about what is actually in service to our clients. What are they actually really, really wanting beyond results? And I think that that's been a really cool part of watching your growth, is like seeing you create deeper intimacy in your work and like more of you in it as well.
Yeah, it's felt really good. And it's a process. Like I'm still figuring it out. But I think like one thing that really comes up for me a lot now in my client work that didn't come up before was like, how will this feel if you get the quote unquote result, but emotionally you're still feeling the exact same way you felt at the beginning? And that lens is so fascinating because it also allows me to do both and say, like, we don't have to, like, this is important to you. Whatever you're working on is important to you, and we're not going to ignore it. But it kind of has this like sobering effect to the work and this like slowing down effect that I think is really important, and like just important for like breaking a bigger pattern that could just continue to play out afterwards. It's not going to matter when you got the job or the promotion. Like you might feel like you're starting all over again.
That is such a profound insight, and something that I think is so, because your work can be so concrete, I imagine that you see so often, right? Because it does feel like, no. I'm really hiring you because I just want this promotion. And then you walk them through it and they get it. And then they come back and they're like, okay, but turns out the exact same challenges I was having pre-promotion, I am now having post-promotion. And like, fuck. I thought this was supposed to be the answer to all my problems. I think it's really cool that you get to see that in a very concrete way, in ways that I think Marie and Rochelle and I don't really get to see because our work is already so not as concrete.
Love calling it a promotion. Definitely going to start saying that. I'll help you with the promotion. Yeah. And also the thing with the promotion specifically is it's going to elevate all of the things that are hard. Everything's going to grow in scale and scope professionally. So it's even like more because you're now going to have bigger stressors and you're going to be holding more than you were holding before. So that in that situation, especially, it's like, if you're not looking at what's underneath the surface right now, then it's going to be really hard to feel good when you find yourself in that place.
Mm-hmm. So interesting what you just said, Jess. Like, as you were talking, I was like, this is exactly why we're here. Like in this mentorship, it's because like a business coach, which I'm sure we've all had business coaches, because that's the first thing you do when you hire a business coach. And the business coach is all about like getting you to launch the group and like make money and get the first 12 clients in. And then you have all of that stuff and you're like, wow, like whatever fears or insecurities or whatever my own stuff was before, now that I have all of these results, oh my God, it's like 10 times worse.
Yeah.
And then we find ourselves here so that we can work on the real stuff.
That's exactly right. As the things on the outside grow, the things on the inside also grow. It's not that they just go away. The doubts and insecurities about doing this work doesn't go away when we have a full client load. It only augments because now we have a full client load. Like, oh my God, the responsibility of having a full client load and them looking at you and you're looking at them. And it's like, wait, oh my gosh, they're now paying me to do this work. And all of our stuff can get activated. And it can be really, really hard to realize that it's not about the exterior as much as the coaching industry wants to make it sound like it's all about the mindset and all about the exterior. There's so much more nuance and complexity to what's really required inside to expand our capacity to hold what people are bringing to us.
That's what I love about this group so much, because there's like that integrity there. I feel like it was a few years ago where I realized like, yeah, it's this work that is the most important, that's going to impact my clients. It's not getting a fancy website. It's not the branding. It's not the marketing. It's the work that I do internally for myself and the skill, the developing of the skill. And this container supports both of those things.
Mm-hmm. What have you found, Rochelle? Because, you have been really on your own journey of owning so much of your incredible skills. And I'm curious, what have you seen in the industry that has really rubbed up against your confidence about seeing your skills and your competence?
Mm-hmm. So much. Where to start? I mean, even when we talk about, so even with, so I'm like, where do I start? Branding, social media. There's so much around positioning yourself as an expert, and it creates like this. And of course, there is always a power dynamic as a practitioner, but there's like this enforcing of that power dynamic where you're positioning yourself as this expert, and I've seen it become manipulative and like lacking in nuance and depth. And we've talked about so many things. Like there's so many like spiritual kind of simplistic jargon phrases that are used and thrown out there without actually exploring like the nuance with someone.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to meet like the parts of them that are showing up in that. And we've talked about with projections, even in this container, and how like sometimes maybe we play that out with the client rather than just like telling them to take personal responsibility for it. We can play it out and support like that younger part of them and help them kind of start to see what's actually going on for them.
Yes, you bring up a really good point that I think we've had a lot of fun together, all of us like really munching on, is that a lot of how do coaches resolve conflict with their clients, and how often the ways in which we tend to see conflict resolution happen in the coaching industry is the coach is right. It's a right or wrong binary where the client thinks that they're right, the coach thinks that they're right. And because the coach is the one in the power dynamic that has more power, it ends up being that the coach is right. And that if the client only took responsibility, then there wouldn't be conflict, that there wouldn't be an issue. I think we've seen this in many ways. And I think that is when conflict arises, I think is when harm is most likely to be created in the coaching industry. Most of the times when I hear a client come to me after having worked with coaches, where they remember being like, oh, I was really dropped by that coach or something, was when conflict happened. And conflict isn't inherently, I want to be delicate with the word harm. Harm happens in conflict, yes, but it doesn't necessarily have to be this horrendously harmful experience. Conflict is actually a natural part of any relationship. And so how do we as coaches navigate conflict when our client disagrees with us, when there's a payment issue, a money issue, whether it's a frame issue, or when you say something and the client gets really hurt by it or finds offense or has an internal experience. And how do we hold that without getting what I think a lot of coaches do, get defensive, right? Well, then that's not what I said. And now you need to own your feelings and take personal responsibility for your feelings.
Yeah. And I've found that you've really supported us in exploring that relational dynamic instead of just looking at like what the client brings in and what's happening like within them, also exploring what's happening in the relationship between client and coach and how to use that to help them have different experiences with the patterns that they bring into our relationship. Which has been so interesting.
But maybe if our client is projecting something onto us, it's not necessarily something that we just turn away from.
Yeah, it's something we can actually work with and support them with.
Yeah. It's been really cool to think about that in this space, because I think it's so the antithesis, it's so opposite of, I think, what a lot of the industry does. So sadly, really, I think it's really, really sad how defensive we tend to get, which of course we do, right? Like, of course we would get defensive. Of course we feel attacked. Of course we have all our feelings. But again, it's like, what spaces can we take those feelings, right? Like what spaces can we go and be like, oh, this really hurt me, so that then with the client, we can continue to maintain that kind of professional hat of like, okay, let's get curious about what's happening here and how we can work through this together. What is yours? What is mine? And what does it mean that this conflict has arisen in this relationship?
Mm-hmm. And in the process, you're like modeling how to repair together, which most people that I have experienced, and I know for myself, didn't experience that in like my family system.
Yeah. The discard culture that we're in.
I'm having a really weird image coming to mind about this container. But like, what you said sort of reminded me of like, if I'm nauseous and I feel like I'm going to throw up, like I can throw up all over my room or I can throw up in the toilet. And like in both situations, and it's gross and it's messy. But oh my God, if I do it in the toilet, my life is so much easier because I don't have to clean up barf all over my room. And I kind of feel that way about being able to bring our stuff into here. am
like
I going
the
to
toilet?
Yeah, but like, no, not, but yes, because like you prevented me from barfing all over in my one-on-one session. I did it in here. And so now, yes, I still feel nauseous. It's hard. It doesn't feel good, but I don't have to clean up a mess that might have gotten created like without that support of how to handle that thing. And there is something about defensiveness and conflict that can feel throw uppy, and that like, you get so caught up in the feelings, and it can feel so hard to reground yourself in the same way of like when you're throwing up, you have no control.
Yeah. I mean, as much as that metaphor also makes me a little queasy, haven't had breakfast yet, I do love it. And I think that that's really just like such an important realization that I had when I started getting my master's, and started entering the world of psychotherapy, that just is so missing in the world of coaching. And it's like, I cannot believe this thing is so missing, given that the coaching industry has really taken on this idea of attachment, right? Like attachment theory has become so popularized. I mean, fuck, we can talk about polyvagal theory has become so popular. It's like all of these like theories have become so popular, but these tiny little tendrils of theories come from a larger body of work that is then missing. So it's like we're picking and choosing what we're kind of knowing without really knowing the context of it, which is that the basis of attachment theory, the basis of all of this is that we view one relationship like we view all relationships, that we have a relational map in which we then put all of our relationships onto. And so, of course, as clients, we're going to do that to our professionals, whether it's a therapist, coach, healer, teacher, facilitator, whatever, groups. Like our relational map is going to get imposed onto that. And it's the same for the other side. As a professional, our relational map is going to be put out into the world with our clients or in any capacity. And how much information we're just kind of playing out and colluding and enacting if we're not really aware of how our client's relational map may be influencing us and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how like coaches do this work on their own without a space like this one where we can talk about this and go deep and conceptualize like what's happening in the coaching relationship. Like I feel like if I was alone in the world of coaching with just me and my clients, I would probably end up having some of these habits that we see in the coaching world, like saying, well, these are my boundaries. And if you bring in a conflict, well, no, that's on you. And then like you hold your stuff, I'll hold my stuff. And I feel like maybe a lot of the things that we see in the coaching world as normal, like these boundaries and self-responsibility, like pushing self-responsibility to an extreme, comes from maybe the fact that these coaches are just alone and they have no support for their stuff,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It just removes a level of transformation that can be possible. I think we want as coaches. And so it's even like of a bummer, I think, that then trauma has become so popularized now in the coaching industry. And now everyone is trauma informed, right? Like everyone thinks that they know trauma. But again, trauma is just another thread in this whole body of knowledge, of understanding how the relationship is playing out. We can't pick and choose, we're going to talk about this traumatic moment and this little, container. And because I know trauma, I can help you in that. And then everything else is separate. Our relationship is separate from your trauma. Right? Like everything else that we're doing in our work is separate from this trauma. And it's like, that's not how the brain works. And so we're missing out on really getting to understand ourselves, getting to understand our clients, getting to understand how to put this work out in the world. If we're picking and choosing and not thinking about the greater context in which all of this lives. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Rochelle.
You can go ahead, Jess.
Something. I think there's this temptation that I see in the industry to like have a process, have steps, whatever. And I think that's also what a lot of people are wanting when they're first hiring a coach, is like the security and knowing of what the process is going to be. And I think some of these bigger themes take you outside of that kind of process. And I think that can be like wildly scary, especially as like a newer coach, like, oh my God, like this isn't gonna, what this client is bringing up isn't going to fit into this like one framework like I memorized from coach training. And I think that is also maybe like why some of these things are taken out of context, because it feels simple, it feels doable, but it's not in service of our clients.
Yeah. Oh, I love a good process though. I remember when I first started, I hold my first handful of coaching clients so fondly because they were, everything that I was learning from them, I was creating my little process. And then I had like a 6-month process, and like I had content for every session. So we met twice a month, and I knew exactly what we were going to talk about. And whatever you brought up, do not worry. I was so skilled at bringing that into the content that I had ready for our session. And it felt so good. It felt so good. They were getting results. They were feeling good. I was feeling good. Oh, it was delicious, right? Like it was so good because I didn't know what to look for. So all I knew was that they were telling me this feels good because they wanted a process. They wanted assurance that there's some step-by-step thing out there that was going to get them something. So I was giving that to them. So I was playing into that. So they felt good. And I felt good because I was the authority, because I knew what to do. I had my steps, I had my thing, I did it. It felt good for both parties. And then what? And then I was missing on a whole rich experience of what that person actually needed and wanted, what they were actually bringing in, because of my own lack of knowing. But the danger about starting is that we tend to think we know more than we do. And so I only saw what I knew to see. And that can get so shallow so fast. It's not that I was creating harm. No, something beautiful happened and it ended and it was perfect. It's not that there was anything bad or wrong with that. It's just that I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I saw what I wanted to see. And then when we see what we want to see, everything is that. And it's like we're flat laying the world, right? We're seeing everything from one specific color, and that's the only color we know. But we're missing on oh my gosh, life is so much richer when there's so much more color. Such a better experience of working with someone when we can see them as like filled with color and dynamics, as opposed to trying to impose one color on them. And they'll like it and they'll get that color and they'll feel good about that color and everyone will be happy. But is it the quality of work that we want to be doing ultimately, sustainably? Maybe that can work at the beginning for the first few years, but then what? Is that how you're going to coach for the rest of your life? Like thinking if you're going to coach for 30, 40, 50 years, are you going to be working from that same framework for 50 years? Like where is the richness in that?
Mm-hmm. I'm laughing because I relate. So I'm laughing internally, trying to be quiet over here because I relate so much to that. Even in my first training and certification I took, I just thought like, this is it. I've got it. And then the more I've learned, I'm like, I know nothing. I know very little. I know a few things. And
I know maybe one thing, maybe.
I have this lens and there's so many other lenses. And that's the thing that's been so supportive in this container is I really latched on to parts work in one of my trainings. I got level 1 in IFS and like, it was amazing. And it works well for some clients, but not all clients. And being in this container has helped me trust myself more and letting go of that, because it gave me certainty too, as well, because it was like, there's this framework I can follow. And now I find it much more easier to kind of flow with the client and to engage in what's happening between us rather than like staying structured with a framework. And there is
IFS is great, and you're so good at that work. It's really cool when we can find the modalities and the tools that feel really good. Like it clicks within us and we can do it, and it clicks within others. But there's a rigidity that happens if that's the only thing we do.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean, I think what we came upon, Rochelle, is that it doesn't mean that you can't use parts work for everybody, but it's just going to really narrow the type of people you can work with and the type of work that you can do. So we can be one-trick ponies. One-trick ponies are great. I love one-trick ponies, like we can do that one thing and do it really well, but it's really going to narrow what we do and who we work with. If we want to work with greater experiences, greater challenges, more people, then we want to start to think about how we can use this trick in a really wise, coherent way, while also knowing we have other tools in the toolbox. And I think that's been a really cool thing watching your journey is like, oh my God, I've actually had a whole toolbox and it's like been inside me all along. And I actually have all of these tools that I didn't even know I really had. And look, now I have my hammer, but I also have everything else that I can use and to help really meet the client where they are at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's been so helpful.
Well, I'm aware of the time and I kind of want to wrap things up. So any other final thoughts, comments, statements?
I will share that I feel scared for what my coaching would look like if I hadn't joined this mentorship. Like, it just feels like it would have gone in a really oversimplified, very cringy direction. And I'm thankful that I started with this because I could really see how you could build a lot of bad habits that feel like good habits. And I'm really thankful that my very early conditioning of like how to think of my role is infused with this.
Yeah, I think that's really wise. You did something really special for yourself that's going to set you up for really long-term success. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I feel similarly. I feel like before I joined this, Thaís, I was like going to deepen my training in NLP. I was going to use that for grief work. And I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so ashamed. But like, you're in the coaching space, in the coaching world, and you're like, Tony Robbins, NLP, like change your freaking state. And I'm like, when I look back, I'm like, oh God. Thank God. Yeah. And I feel like the more skills you gather in like how to hold space in a powerful way and how to use the relationship for the transformation, I feel then you can leave your bag of tricks like on the side. Like you don't really need it anymore. Like I don't need the NLP. Thank goodness.
Oh, can you imagine like a parallel universe where Marie was out in the world like using NLP? I can just imagine like Marie like going to Tony Robbins and just becoming like the Tony Robbins of grief. I love
that. Change your grief into gratitude like that.
Transmute it. Quantum leap it into the next dimension where it doesn't feel painful anymore.
What grief? Like, let's just bypass it altogether.
Your husband died last week. You shouldn't have any feelings about it now. If you can use my tools, you'll be fine.
Oh, so embarrassing.
Thanks for sharing that, Marie.
Hey, I've done an NLP training. Thank you very much. I spent $2,000 of my hard-earned dollars getting an NLP training that I literally don't remember fuck all about.
I find NLP looks so shady to me, and it's used a lot in cults, just FYI. Like,
yeah.
So now I'm like, oh.
It's just I think ultimately these tools just give people confidence because they have something. And I see this in the world of psychotherapy too. This is not exclusive to the coaching industry or self-help. EMDR is such a popular thing right now, and it's because people love it because it gives them a play by play, and then you can alleviate your own anxiety. And sometimes when we're so new and so anxious, it can feel really good to tether ourselves into something that we can do. But I think what we're all speaking to is actually there's a different way. And if we can find spaces like this out there, that allows us to develop our own skill and voices, we can, again, learn how to use these tools as necessary, but we don't need to use them as a crutch for our anxiety. We actually we can process our anxiety, so that it doesn't interfere with our coaching work, instead of informing it, dictating it, and being an intricate part of our coaching work.
Totally. I was in the place of continually taking new trainings and new certifications and feeling like I needed this one and that one and this container. I remember you just telling me you don't need to take another program. And this container has really just helped me deepen into integrating what I have learned.
Yeah.
But then also develop these new relational skills as well.
Yeah. 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 Because you do not need more.
I feel that now. I'm settled.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. All right, women. Well, thank you so much for letting me record this session today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.